Hang on to your tits, kids. Here we go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Season 4, Episode 2 of Legends and Lore, the only informational show about tabletop role-playing games on Twitch that promises to rub your rhubarb the exact wrong direction. This evening, you are with your host, game designer, game master, and all-around pain-in-the-ass dick, GeoQuester. And to my left is my partner in the stream and in life, my beautiful wife, the one, the only, the mistress of darkness herself, the Susie Q.
Hello, my lovelies!
Excellent. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Today, we are going to continue our wonderful series on campaigns and how-tos. And we are going to talk about how to choose your first adventure. So, but before we get into that, we are going to go through some of our announcements. First off, I would like to announce that the very first episode of Tales from the Yawning Portal, Dragon Mountain, the playtest campaign, with our 4 winners from the Fantasy Grounds College, will be starting at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. So be sure to come by, check that out. These poor guys have no idea what is going to be falling on their flippin' heads. Now, first of all, if you guys are, you ladies and gentlemen out there, are a little sensitive to strong language or rude humor or any such thing,
Get the fuck off my stream!
there you go. Susie Q said it herself. The unicorn herself has said it. Get the fuck out, because we don't hold back and we don't pull our punches. We make sure that all you bitches get the information you need without filtering it at all.
And if you want to bitch, moan, groan, and complain, I got a tube of Vagisil for you.
There you go. And remember, crunchy peanut butter is not an anal lubricant.
Depends if crunchy or smooth.
I said crunchy peanut butter is not an anal lubricant.
Yeah, crunchy is definitely not. Definitely not. Go with the smooth. Definitely, I recommend it.
Jif is better. Okay, so, and by the way, we are not sponsored by Jif in any way, shape, or form.
We're sponsored by Skippy.
No, we are not sponsored by Skippy. We can't say that on live Twitch, or else we get in trouble for shit like that. So we are not sponsored by any of those people. All right, so as you can see on your right-hand side of your screen right now are today's topics. We're going to talk about your first adventures. We're going to talk about pre-made modules, how to make scratch modules. We're going to be talking about, well, all sorts of shit from the GM's and the player's perspectives on how to do certain things. Once we get through a lot of this information, we will also go through and we will take our viewer questions. If you have a question, be sure to PM Susie, that means private message, PM Susie Q here in Twitch or over in Discord, and we will try to get everything answered this evening. It's going to be kind of a long one, so we're going to start getting moving this evening. Now, your first adventure. Your first adventure is between the players and the GM. We're talking brand new players, okay? We're talking brand new players, brand new GMs, you know, people who are just setting off. We're not talking people who have been playing for 20 some odd years or anything like that. We're not talking about those people. Those people already know what they're doing. We're talking about our noobs. We love our newbies because, let's be honest, D&D 5th edition is, you know, the most popular tabletop role-playing game out there right now. So, I mean, it's taken the first spot back from Pathfinder, which Pathfinder had it throughout the entirety of the 4th edition era. So we'll just whisper that one. But we want to make sure that our first adventure is a good impression on our new players and a good impression and a good fit for our first-time GMs. Now, we can talk about a lot of pre-published modules. We can talk about a lot of different things, but you know, we would start normally, and Susie Q's done this multiple times, I've done this multiple times myself, we start normally off with Lost Mines of Phandelver as the go-to starter adventure.
For 5th edition, yeah, it's pretty much Lost Mines.
Yeah, exactly. It's been Lost Mines. We've had a couple of other basic ones that we've started with each edition of D&D, like what was it? The Kobold Keep that was beneath the city there in 4th edition. In 3rd edition, we had Salt Marsh. In 2nd edition, God, there was so many different modules.
It was that was one of those. It's up to the GM. Like it all depended on what GM you were starting off with as to what campaign you were going to start off with. We have one GM, big fan of Undermountain. So if you were a new player, you were going to start in Undermountain. We had another one. Big fan of Forgotten Realms. So if you were a brand new player, you were starting off somewhere in Forgotten Realms. Usually,
It's usually Shadowdale for that one.
yeah, Shadowdale or Waterdeep.
So, but I mean, you've got all sorts of things to go, and take a look at. But what are the criteria of a first adventure? So, as a first adventure, as a GM, as you're looking at your table and you look at your players, we've already talked last week about how to start the campaign, how to get these players to your table. Now you've got them here. They've made their first characters. Now, what do we want to do as their first adventure? Well, first thing you want to do is you look at the character sheets and you think about it for a second and figure out what is a good fit for them. What allows each one of them to have a moment in the spotlight where they can utilize their character's abilities where nobody else around the table can. So, for example, if you have a rogue in the party, you want to make sure that there is an opportunity for stealth. If you have a bard in the party, you want to make sure that there's an opportunity to utilize some of their charm and some of their wit. If there's a fighter in the party, you want to have combat. If there's a wizard in the party, you want to make sure that they can utilize their spells and that they can utilize the utility of their arcana checks. If there's a cleric in the party or a druid in the party, you want to make sure that they have opportunities to either use nature or to use religion in some way, shape, or form that only their characters can do it. These are the times where you sit down and you look at the characters and you try to match your adventure. Now, the next part is you want to make sure it's an adventure that you have the skill to be able to run. You don't want to go out and you don't want to run something that's going to be hard right off the bat. You don't want to do Tomb of Annihilation, even though it's the current module that's out there, when you're a first-time GM. There are too many moving parts in Tomb of Annihilation for a first-time GM and first-time players to be able to effectively use. Even skilled GMs and experienced GMs have difficulty running it. So don't try to do it your first time out. You'll have a horrible experience, even though it's an amazing module. You'll have an absolutely horrible experience because you just don't have all the working pieces and the skill to be able to wrap a story into it without, really kind of dropping the ball. So you have to look at your skill level. Next, you want to look at your players' skill levels. Are these brand new players? I mean, never ever sat down at a table before. Do they have a little bit of experience? Do they understand that, okay, flanking means I have advantage when I'm standing on opposite sides of a creature from one of my companions? Or are they an expert? A person who's been around since the dawn of time, who's a dinosaur of D&D, and goes, well, back in my day, I remember when Chult was such and such and so and so, and we had Malatra in the living jungle by the RPGA. Do you have one of those guys around your table? So if you do, you got to kind of adjust things. You can't run Lost Mines of Phandelver for somebody who's an expert player and you're a starting GM and expect that this player isn't going to bowl you over in your first adventure. They'll ask you questions like, hey, I know that the person on the other side of this door can speak Draconic. I'm speaking Draconic. How come they're not answering me? Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, a streamer was asked this question, this very same question, and was bitched at by a player because he didn't have the answer. And there are times where your players are going to have more experience than you, and they're going to pull this kind of shit on you.
I am fucking notorious for this shit. If you're a new GM and you don't know your shit and you haven't done your research and stuff like that, I will rape you for everything you're worth.
That is true, yeah.
I have done it multiple times. New GMs are my favorites because I get away with shit like, hey, I'm a 3rd level paladin. Can I have a +5 Holy Avenger? And those little schmuck buckets say, yeah, you're a paladin. You can have a +5 Holy Avenger. That's awesome. That sounds good.
Okay. Well, Susie, you actually there's a question focused to you. When Geo runs any pre-made modules, how much of it would he actually use?
Honestly, that depends on it. It honestly depends on the module. If you look at some of like you guys already know that most of his stuff is stuff that he has written himself. It's in an adventure. It's based off something else, but tweaked. Now, for the most part, he'll go mostly by the pre-made adventure. However, he's also going to tweak that adventure to fit the different players. He's I have to say this, and this is not just because I'm his wife. It's just the fact that he is an amazing GM, and he's able to um, tweak the game as it's being run to suit the different players. Like if we don't have a rogue and it's a really like trap heavy, locks heavy, stuff like that, he's going to tweak it because we don't have anybody who can open locks. If there's not a healer in the party, he's going to tweak it a little bit so that, there's additional opportunities for us to kind of take a short rest and kind of get something back. He's not going exactly by the book, but he goes enough by the book so you know that that's the adventure that's being run.
So, but that actually brings up the next point of choosing your first module. As a beginning GM, I mean, of course, we'll ignore the conversation that's going on in chat right now about how do they know what's going on behind the door and all the rest of these things. That kind of stuff happens, okay? I mean, we understand as GMs that there are times where players have either played an adventure before, especially experienced players, have played an adventure before, or they've run adventures before that have this information already available to them. They already know it. They're metaing it, and they're just causing you grief. We already know this. That's an entirely different show. But this brings up a great question about our first adventure. That is, when I am running my first adventure as a new game master with new players, relatively new, how often do I go off script? Where do I go off script? And why do I go off script?
That I think is really up to the DM. You're going to know if you've read the adventure beforehand, which as a GM you should have done already. You're going to know where there are spots where you can kind of go off script. You're also going to know where there are spots where this is integral to the campaign. This is integral to the module. You can't flub that. You can't go off script on that one. That one has to be those instances have to be by the book. But in between that, if you're comfortable going off script, by all means, as long as it leads to the place that it needs to lead to.
Now, also, there's natural locations where things come off script, where the wheels come off the bus, and the DM's, very carefully laid plans go all to shit faster than hell. And those things happen all the time, and you have to expect that they're going to happen. You have to wait for them to happen. I mean, they're going to happen. They're going to be there. It's part of being a GM is the players are going to do something ridiculous that is going to make you go, what? And that happens all the time. You have to be prepared for this. And that is where preparation during your first adventure comes in. You will read through your adventure, you will understand, okay, when they're talking to this goblin over here in the Lost Mines of Phandelver, they're talking to this goblin. I know that they can negotiate or they can fight. So during the negotiations, I know that this goblin's personality is going to be like this. Now, it doesn't say in the module, this goblin over here on the left side of the cave, who has this dwarf as a prisoner, has this kind of personality. No, he doesn't. But at the same time, you can sit down as a GM beforehand because you've read the module, you've read, at least parts ahead, so you are prepared for what the players do. You know that, okay, this goblin over here who has the dwarf held hostage, he doesn't like the bugbear that's in the other part of the cave that is the quote-unquote boss of the tribe, and he wants to kick his ass. So maybe if the players say, hey, look, we will put you in place. As a matter of fact, the group that I belong to when we played Lost Mines did this exact thing. We're going to be the ones who put you as the head of the goblin tribe, so you'll owe us. This kind of negotiation goes way off script. It's way outside the purview of a pre-made module. But at the same time, this is the exact information that players are going to try to do. Not always are they going to be murder hobos. Okay, they're not going to murder everything all the time. Especially new players. New players try to feel things out. They try to discover, do I like to talk during my games? Do I like to fight things during my games? Do I like to use my dice to determine what I'm going to do next, kind of things? I have all sorts of players on my tables, and I've seen every one of these kinds of things. You have to read ahead in your module. That's another big thing about choosing your first module. Choose something small so you can read it ahead. You can understand it. You can make little notes on the side for yourself. But do these kinds of things. Be prepared in your first module. So we've talked about the players and their personalities before. We talked about those during our campaign setup during the last episode. You also need to have that in mind when you choose your first adventure. If, as we just mentioned, you have nothing but murder hobos, then you're going to want an adventure that is nothing but non-stop combat. I have players that fall asleep at the table if there's going to be RP. I have players who can't stand being in combat. They want to talk their way out of it every chance they get. And then I have other players who pee on every single door that they run across.
Not every single door.
Just the ones that have water motifs and stuff.
Exactly. Those are obviously meant to have some sort of water poured on them. I'm not giving it the water that I have in my bag. That's just, no, I need that for something else. I will give them the water that's in my bladder.
Yes. So we have, yes, Susie is the peer.
I am the peer.
Yes. She is the wee queen. We have all sorts of wonderful opportunities, and when you look at your modules, check this stuff out. Check to see if there is an opportunity for your player to kind of go off script and be silly, and it fits their personality. Now, if you have a mix of personalities, which a fair number of tables have mixes of personalities around the table, we want to try to cover as many of those as we can. And we try to spotlight those characters and spotlight those players. Give them a moment in the sun. Every single one of them needs a moment in the sun. And that is where we are going to go to next. We're going to talk about pre-made modules. We're going to talk about how newbie-friendly they are. And we're going to talk about our ratings for them. So we have purposely left 2 off of this list. I think at least 2 off this list. We've left off Lost Mines of Phandelver, which is part of the starter set for D&D 5th edition, if you've gotten to see it, which I'm sure everybody has seen it since it's been out since 2014. And we also left off Curse of Strahd at the moment. The reason why Curse of Strahd, because it is a very lore-heavy one that not everybody likes, and it has a lot of additional things. A lot of extra moving parts, like cards and other things. But we are going to talk about these other things. Oh my god, look it! We have infographics!
Woohoo!
Alright, so these are the 6 basic campaigns that are considered to be the D&D pre-made modules by Wizards of the Coast. These are the 6. As you can see, each one of them starts at level 1, and then they go anywhere between level 10 to level 15-ish by the time you are done with them. And you'll also see that we have ratings for each one of them. These are not ratings on how we feel that these modules are, if they are good or if they are bad. These are modules that we have rated in such a way that new GMs and new players can understand them. Now, Susie Q and I have either run and or played almost every single one of these. So, just want to go there for a second. Sorry, I'm reading some comments. I often take the creatures in the module and create my own tables if there isn't one already. Yes, for random encounters, I do that all the time, and I also try to put things together in such a way that we have random encounters that actually mean something, and I always pre-roll my random encounters so I understand them well before then. But we'll talk about that here in a second. Alright, so the first one I want to talk about is right in the dead middle of your screen. It's called Tyranny of Dragons. It's actually 2 campaign modules put together. It goes, let's see, The Rise of Tiamat and then Horde of the Dragon Queen, I do believe, are the 2 modules in that one. It's been forever. This was one of the first modules that came out. It only came out when there was just basic 5th edition D&D rules available. The D&D Next stuff was out at the time as well. But as you can see, Susie Q and I have rated this one 4.5 stars. This is for new GMs. This is for new players. It is meant to guide you through how to play D&D. It doesn't tell you, now roll a d20 and add the following. It doesn't do that. Okay, that's what Lost Minds of Phandelver does. This is a module that goes very simple and uses very simple and basic elements right at the beginning and shows you step by step how to ramp it up, how to really make very simple logistics into a complicated encounter. These are the kinds of things that we look for in a module when it comes to new players.
Exactly. It's nice.
Okay, now the next one we want to talk about is Tales from the Yawning Portal. Tales from the Yawning Portal came out April. What was it? January, February, March, April. Yeah, April 4th of 2017. And that module starts off easy. For those of you who don't know what Tales of the Yawning Portal is, it's actually 7 modules from D&D's past. Some of the best modules that were ever made from, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and basic. And they were brought forward into 5th edition. They start off very slow, very easy, and ramp up in difficulty and ramp up in complexity as you move through them. And you can play them as a campaign, where the Yawning Portal, which is a inn and a tavern right in the middle of Waterdeep where adventurers hang out, they use that as the hub and how to get your adventures, how to get your quests, and you will return there as a player group over and over and over again to move on to the next piece and the next adventure that's there. It starts very simple, fighting goblins and kobolds, very, very easy with a little bit of a twist. It's like, oh, you're looking for an apple that does wonderful things. And it goes all the way through to the Tomb of Horrors, which way back when in the day, the Tomb of Horrors was known as a player killer. So myself, Rob Toohey, who's here in chat, Susie Q, FSH Schmo, and many of the rest of us, we have been dubbed the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. We play this on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. We stream it. Multiples of us stream it on our computers and stuff like that, and in our chats and stuff. So you're all welcome to come and watch those things as they unfold. We are currently in White Plume Mountain with Rob Toohey running. I've already had my opportunity to run. I ran the second adventure. Doug Davison of Fantasy Grounds ran the first adventure. Praetor's Rejects ran the third adventure. We're on the 4th right now. So we have a couple more waiting to come out yet. So we haven't gotten to the other ones yet. So we're in White Plume right now. The next one that we want to talk about that is what we would consider to be player friendly and GM friendly is Storm King's Thunder. Storm King's Thunder is in a new region. It handles weather effects. It handles all sorts of additional. I'm not going to waste the plot line on anybody. By the way, I'm going to try to keep as many spoilers out of my reviews as I possibly can. But Storm King's Thunder definitely brings in some additional elements that players don't typically get to see, and one of those being weather. You get to play with the weather, and the weather is a key and integral part. You also get underwater encounters. You also get movement and overland travel. You get a lot of those things. I won't waste it, but that's a good one for starting players and starting GMs. Not horrible. It's not horrible at all. The next one is the Princes of the Apocalypse. Now, Susie Q got to play in this one, and I do believe it was, what, your third module you ever played in 5th edition?
Something like that, and it was Rob Tui was running it, so it's Princes of the Apocalypse. Now, I'm not going to say that this is not a new player-friendly game, because it kind of sort of is, but not for true noobs. Don't make this your first module. It is still just like Tales of the Yawning Portal. This is a player chewer upper and spitter out. So, but it introduces you to some nice elements of the game.
Good. Yep. See, now, once again, it gives us more options as GMs and as players on what we want to do. Skill level, once again, has come up. If you've played a few times, and if you've run a couple of games, you know, you've gone through Lost Mine of Phandelver, and you want to kind of crank up the difficulty a little bit for your players, or if you've been a player who's already played through the Lost Mines, then Princes of the Apocalypse would probably be your next step, your next choice of an adventure. Now, I wouldn't really choose it as my first, but as a second, yeah, I could choose it as my second. Now, that brings us to Out of the Abyss. Now, Out of the Abyss, I only rated 3 stars. Susie Q and I only rated it 3 stars. I've read it. I haven't gotten to run it yet. Susie has not gotten to play it yet, or run it. And Out of the Abyss deals with extraplanar information and extraplanar encounters, which can be touchy from time to time. They require preparation. It requires a lot of prep in order to run it effectively and in an entertaining fashion. It takes players who understand their characters, and it takes a GM who understands the limitations of the game that they are running and the limitations of their players. This is not something I would recommend to a brand new GM. I would not recommend this to brand new players. If you see that this is going to be run and you want to play it, go into it with the idea that you may not understand some of the funky rules that you really want to play with. There are some funky rules to it, and you've got to just keep that in mind. If you don't like funky rules, you don't like following plot threads by yourself, this doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't hold your hand at all. So if you're a proactive player that looks for plot lines and wants to talk to people and wants to do things, this is up your alley. But if you're not one of those kinds of people, or you haven't really come out of your shell yet in this gaming group that you've put together, this is not something for you. I would not recommend this to you. Now, last but not least is the Tomb of Annihilation. Susie Q is currently playing in it with Rob Tui running, and I've read it from cover to cover. Now, as a GM, looking at it, first of all, I tee-hee and giggle to myself. Now, my benchmark is the louder I tee-hee, the lower on my newbie rating this goes. Because that means that there is shit in there that is going to fuck somebody up and really cause some hell. Susie Q, you're a more experienced player than many. I mean, you get to play a lot more than most people do. As a player's side, what do you think about this one? We only rated it 2.5 stars. So on a player's side, what do you think as far as new people go on this one?
Tomb of Annihilation is definitely not for new players, and it is definitely not for the faint of heart. If you're someone who doesn't like it when when your character dies, I do not recommend this game to you, since you no sooner take it out of the box and open the book, and the first thing you see is make sure your players make 3 characters apiece, because they are going to die. I mean, that was like one of the first things Rob said to us was, "Yeah, you all need to make three characters, because yeah, you're all gonna die."
Yeah. So when you get the warning label on an adventure that says, yeah, there's going to be many character deaths right off the get-go, right off jump, that is not a GM nor player friendly game. One moment, please, while we speak to a child. Okay, so yeah, we only rated this one 2.5 stars because of the fact that there are additional things. Now, it also plays with basic rules. There are some basic preconceptions of D&D 5th edition. For example, death saves are a DC 10. In Tomb of Annihilation, that's not the case. Yes, thank you, spoiler alert, Rob. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, don't do that shit. It's spoiler alerts, yo. I mean, yes, most everybody knows what the DC is in, Tomb of Annihilation, but let's just say people haven't gotten to see it yet. Whenever a module takes the basic assumption of D&D, or whatever game system you happen to be running, takes that basic assumption, jeepers, my mouth is not working tonight, and turns it on its head, that is considered a more expert-styled module. We don't... Go ahead.
Well, we also kind of voted to run it in player killer mode.
Yeah, as they call it, meat grinder mode. Yes, the option of meat grinder.
Yeah, we chose meat grinder. We purposefully did that.
Which is fine. I mean, but once again, most everybody who is sitting around that table is considered to be a more advanced player. They are more experienced. They have a few years under their belt. They understand this. And Rob has been running games for a few years as well. He understands that it's a little bit more advanced. But even Rob can tell you that as a DM, this module has a lot of moving parts that you have to keep track of at all times. And there's weird shit going on all around you. And as a GM, you're constantly doing something behind the scenes to make sure the game is moving smoothly for the players. Or else it's going to come to a grinding halt as everybody stands there and scratches their head and their ass, going, I don't know what the fuck just happened to me.
Even doing that, I think we've definitely had some moments like that. There was a temple in particular where we kind of went, "What the fuck just happened to me? Did I just get my ass kicked?" Yeah, I think I just got my ass kicked.
So yes, but the thing is, there are certain GMs and players out there who find that to be absolutely entertaining. I mean, as a GM, if I can run a module that surprises me while I'm running it and I've already prepared, then I'm really happy because I like to have a little surprise in my life. I mean, I've been running and playing games for over 30 years. I really want to have something that, excites me from time to time. But that brings us to the end of the pre-made modules. Okay, and these are the pre-made campaign modules. Wizards of the Coast put them out. They are available on Fantasy Grounds as modules. You can purchase them there. You can purchase them in your stores. You can purchase them online. I mean, you can purchase them pretty much anywhere, and you can play these games. These are wonderful games, all of them, even the ones that are really difficult. But just keep in mind, not all of the newer ones are considered to be newbie-friendly. So if these are going to be your first modules, just be forewarned that they are not newbie-friendly to GMs or to players.
Yeah, definitely not. So now we move on to the Yeah, I don't want to use the module for my first game. I want to create my own little thing.
Exactly. We move on to something called Scratch Adventures.
One of my favorites. I love Scratch Adventures and some of the shit that some of the GMs that I've ran with over the years have come up with.
All right, so we're going to have a little experiment go on right now, ladies and gentlemen. All right, you in chat are going to create a Scratch Adventure. It is going to be a newbie-friendly Scratch Adventure. So, what I've pulled up, as you can see over here in the upper right-hand corner, is a thing called Scapple. Scapple is by www.literatureandlatte.com. It's a free download. You can use it. It helps you organize your thoughts. I use this when I am putting together a new module or an adventure or something like that. So, all right. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start a new adventure. This is going to be newbie-friendly adventure. Alright, so there, newbie-friendly. Put that right there in the middle. That is what I want it to be. I want it to be newbie-friendly. So, I know, for example, somebody, the first person to name a monster. We'll go ahead and name any kind of monster that's in anything. Just name it. Name one. We'll make an adventure module that has this. It doesn't have to be a pre-existing setting. It could be any kind of setting. Kobolds. All right, kobolds are the first ones I see. Awesome. All right, so we got kobolds. Next, do we want it to be in a dungeon or outside? There you go. What's next? We want it dungeons or outside? Well, we're going to start with, we're just going with the start. So, Susie, you can't answer. So, alright. We will go with dungeons. Well, dungeon in this instance means caves, anything underground, indoors, that kind of stuff. Okay, so dungeon. So there's our three basic things that we need. We need it newbie friendly, it's going to be with kobolds, and it's going to be in a dungeon. Now, there are three parts to every adventure. You got the beginning, you got the middle, and you got an end. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the end is the end of the adventure period. It just means it's the end of for now. Now, the beginning is the introduction of the players. Put one too many lines in that. It's the introduction of the players to the adventure. What does the player really need to know in order to get them wrapped in? So what we need is we need a plot hook. Me and my silliness, I always forget to do this. So we need a plot hook. Alright, we need a reason for the players to go on their adventure. Now, that plot hook can be something simple. Okay, well, let's talk something simple. Oh, how about somebody give me a plot hook about anything? What would make the PCs want to do something? Okay, alright, kobolds have run away with a farmer's prize chicken.
Interesting. Kobolds like chicken.
They do, because they taste like baby.
Exactly.
Okay, so that is called the stolen goods plot hook. That is a very common plot hook. Same thing with lost treasure. That's also a very common. And we do use those things all the time. So we got stolen goods as our plot hook. And the characters are going to begin. Give me a place where the characters begin. Any location. Any location. We'll make it work. An unknown ailment, okay. Down on the farm, okay. Awesome. Alright, so we're going to begin on the farm with the plot hook that kobolds came and stole chickens from the farmer. That's a very simple, very basic idea for a first level adventure. That's awesome. Now we're going to move on to the middle. Alright, the middle can have two different outcomes. That's what we'll say. You got middle 1 and middle 2 here. Okay, we got two separate middles. Now, in these middles, we'll say based on the plot hook adventure, okay, our initial information. Okay, according to our initial information, the stolen goods were from the farm. Now, the players will determine at that point whether or not that meant that kobolds had come in to steal them, because, of course, the farmer does not know that it was kobolds, or was it goblins? So we will say that this middle over here is goblins. And this one over here is kobolds. Alright. Now, the players have their choice. Do the players think that it was goblins that did it? If so, they go to that one instead. Oh, actually, let's flip that around. I have too many buttons to hit at the same time. There we go. So, do they go to this one first, or do they go to this one over here? Alright, so there we go. Which one of these two do they go to? Now, they may discover that the goblins are not the ones who stole the chickens. It was actually the kobolds. So, they could have, in their initial investigation, gotten it correct and did the kobolds, or they could have failed in their initial investigation and went to the goblins instead. So at this point, we will make sure that they go from the goblins over to the kobolds. But not vice versa. They don't go back to the goblins. If they got it right the first time, they will end up with the kobolds no matter what. Okay, so then we will go to a dungeon at this point. The dungeon could be the kobold cave here. It could be anything we want. And they would go ahead and they would journey through there. They would find information and they would move on. At that point, we would move on to our end. They have found it, and they have found the chickens, and they are returning them to the farmer. Boom. End. That is a simple beginning adventure. That's it. That's all we have to do. We have a beginning with a plot hook of stolen goods on a farm, the initial information that causes the investigation, the players interpret this information, and they will either go to the goblins and go through that little goblin dungeon over there just to determine the fact that, nope, it's not the goblins, that was a red herring. And so, or if they were good at their investigation, they move over here, and they find out it's the kobolds. And they go through the kobolds dungeon, they find the chicken, and they go home, and they have chicken dinner. That is basically how to set up an adventure. That is a simple, simple adventure. Now, more complicated adventures can branch off of this. During this investigation here with the kobolds, or even with the goblins, the players could discover future information for additional things. Or this ending right here just leads to a new beginning, where now that they've saved the chickens for the farmer, the mayor of this little town sees that they want to go off. It's like, oh, we had problems with hobgoblins extorting us. Could you help us with that? And you start chaining off your adventures, and you keep going on and on and on and on and on. Yes, the adventure is called Chicken Dinner, written by Rob Toohey. Specifically for the FGC. But But that's, that's what we have for that. I mean, you could do anything here. You could add additional things in here. You could add MacGuffins. You could add... MacGuffin, by the way, is a piece of equipment or an item or a piece of information that is useful later on in the adventure. You could do all sorts of these things, and when we talk about building dungeons, which will be next week's topic, by the way. When we talk about building dungeons and we talk about doing that kind of stuff, we will talk about how to put it in a MacGuffin. What is the generic setup for dealing with adventure modules and dungeon modules and location-based adventures. We'll talk about that next week. But this is a very simple setup. And you could do so much with this. You could add shit to it everywhere that could keep chaining off into different directions. So this is just a, Scapple, by the way, is just a very easy way for me to keep track of my ideas while I'm being all mixy-matchy and weird and shit. So, alright, so that is it for me ranting and rambling. Let's go back to some viewer questions.
Okay, well, one of our viewers wants to know, what was the first adventure you ran, and what was the first adventure you played?
You go ahead and start that one off, Susie.
Okay.
I gotta think back a little bit further than you do.
Well, both of them were pretty much the same. The first adventure I ran was actually a 3rd edition, just scratch game, straight up. Just scratched it out on a piece of paper, and that was about it. The first adventure I ever played in, again, just a scratch game, just Forgotten Realms, nowhere in particular, just kind of fell into it.
Yeah, and that was, Bruce that ran that one, wasn't it? Or was it Brian?
No, that was Bruce. That was before we met Brian. But yeah, that was the old Grognard himself running that one, and it was it was that game, and then I think the week after that was when I played my first Rifts game.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that was way back when. Damn, that was before we were married. That was when we were still dating.
Yep, that was before we even started dating.
Yeah, holy shit. But okay, so that was Susie Q's. My first module I ever played, my first adventure, was probably Keep on the Borderlands. Seems to be a pretty popular one for us old farts. Keep on the Borderlands is the first one I played in as a player. If I remember correctly, I played a fighter, and I was killed in the Goblin Cave. I got gangbanged in a Goblin Cave. So, yeah.
Okay, do you use dungeon or encounter dressings in your module?
Well, I will get to that in a second. Let me finish my train of thought. Now, the first one I ran, module-wise. Now, I've run scratch games since the beginning, but the first one I actually ran, module-wise, was Undermountain. And that was for 15 to 16 players at once in the same room with 2nd edition rules. So that was the first one I actually ran like that. I think I even ran... No, that's wrong. Nope. The first one I ran was an Oriental Adventures module. I don't remember which one, though. So, alright, do I use dungeon or encounter dressings in my modules? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I try to dress everything up as the way I would like to hear it as a player. I try to dress it up as a GM, and as a game designer, I try to dress those things up.
Okay, now, how do you try to get interested in a system where you had a bad first experience? For me, alright, any system gets a minimum of 5 shots. So I will play it 5 separate times. If out of those 5 times I still have a bad experience every single time, I just won't play that system anymore. Straight up. But if I'm trying to get interested in the system, the first thing I'm doing, I'm reading the books. I'm getting the books, I'm reading the books. I'm You know, if I'm unsure about it, I'll borrow them from somebody who has the books. It makes no never mind to me. But the 3 books I'm reading are whatever player's guide they have, the Dungeon Master's Guide, whatever, or Storyteller's Guide, or whatever they're calling it, and a monster manual. Because those 3 things are going to tell me right off the bat what I am going to need to be able to play this game. If it means I have to figure out how to play with a D8 system, okay, so let's figure out how to play with a D8 system. It makes no never mind to me. But 5 separate GMs per system. If I still have a bad experience, the system's out.
Yeah, I think the only out system for you at the moment, well, there's 2 actually that are out for you. That would be Rollmaster, because it's just too fucking complicated,
Oh my fucking god.
and GURPS. I think those are the only 2 that are out for you.
No. GURPS is fine, but Rollmaster is definitely out. There's oh my fucking god. I don't have enough paper in this house to be able to keep track of the shit I need to keep track of with Rollmaster. The other one that is by and far fucking out is HARP, High Adventure Roleplay.
Well, that's just Rollmaster Light.
Whatever it is, Human Occupied Landfill is another one I won't play.
Yeah, but that's just because that's just a bad game all the way around.
That's just a bad game all around. I won't. Nope. Thank you. No.
For me, the 2 that I subscribe to about the same thought process as Susie, except I only give it 3 shots. And this goes for even campaigns. I will give a GM 3 shots before I say, I just can't fucking play with you. You are a pain in my ass. And then I'll just walk away from it, typically. Sometimes I bear it out because I have to, but typically that's what I do. But the 2 game systems that I've done it to in the past are Continuum. Actually, I'll give you 3 game systems. Continuum, which is a time-hopping game. It's a role-playing game. And you actually have to have a 3-ring binder with special logs in them to record where and when your character is, throughout time, and where you are in the world and everything, because you have opportunities of paradox and running across yourself. And it's nothing but paperwork. Just paperwork. And if anybody knows me, I don't do fucking paperwork for nothing. The second one is Toon. I can't do the Toon RPG. I do not like... See here, Susie cackling in the background madly.
I fucking love Toon!
I can't stand Toon. Anytime I have to play Toon, I only do it because other people around me are like, come on, we gotta play this. I can't fucking stand it. Any game that is so ridiculous, I just can't do it. It's just beyond me.
It's like Who Framed Roger Rabbit in a fucking role-playing book. It's great. I'm gonna throw up a hole on the wall and crawl through it.
Yeah, I can't do it. Can't do it. It's too silly for me. I like being silly while I roleplay and stuff like that, but I can't have the mechanics of a system be silly. And when the first mechanic of a system is try to get away with whatever you can, and don't let the GM know that you're trying to get away with this shit. And the second one is, how hard do I make my GM laugh, is how good of a success that I have. I just can't do it. Just can't do it. I'm not a very funny person. I try not to be a very funny person anyway. I pun like there's nobody's business, but as far as, straight up, jokes go, I don't really do that. And then the third system that I really can't stand is Amber. I do not like the Amber Diceless system. It's stupid, it's ridiculous, and makes no sense to me at all.
I've never actually played Amber, so I can't say that I wouldn't play it.
You wouldn't like it. I will tell you that right now. You would not like it.
Like I said, I can't definitively say that because I've never played it, so.
Yeah, I need to have some kind of rules to go with my stuff. I can't have rules that say, oh, you can break every rule because there is no rules. I don't like that shit. Fuck that. Fuck that shit.
Okay, so how much backstory do you allow or expect at the start of a new game?
Okay, now this is something that I get asked a lot. Like, how much do you want me to write about my character? Or in the case of my maidens in chat, they love to write me books and expect me to read the whole fucking 762 volumes of how their character did their nails that morning. Um, Fuck that. That's too much information. Please stop giving me that much information. But there's a couple of things. I do need to know kind of where your character comes from. I do need to know its basic personality. But until you've played the character, you really can't get into those things. So before the game begins, I need to know more basically about my player than I do about their character. I mean, I know the basic rules for what your class, your race, your backgrounds are, but how you play them together, how you mix them together, and how you view those things together is entirely different. But a little bit of backstory is good. Too much backstory is clutter, and I will not focus on clutter.
Um, I've been kind of known to get together with other players and be like, hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Let's make our backstories like intertwined and really just fuck with them. And they're like, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, and then you sit on the table and you realize that your character and their character hate each other even though they're best friends, and there's never been any strife in the character's written backstory, but as far as the character's playing, they're not playing to that backstory anymore.
You just don't understand the characters. We're still playing to the backstory. We just don't like each other at this point.
Well, there's views on how things are interpreted, and this is why I don't like a ton of backstory. I mean, if you want to write me 3 books worth of backstory for your character and how they came to get this rusty longsword that they have at level 1, by all means, go ahead and write me 3 books worth. I will tell you up front, I will not read all of it. And especially if it's written poorly, I will not read all of it. Good on you for writing that much backstory, and if you keep trying to bring it up to me throughout the game, but in my backstory it says, well, that was fucking the past, yo, this is the present. You don't have that now. So, that's another thing. When people write plot devices into their backstory and expect the game master, especially new game masters, to pull out all the stops to bring in those plot devices, that is not a good thing. We'll talk about player cheating later. But for right now, let's continue on with the rest of our questions.
I kind of like the backgrounds tables that they have with the flaws and the bonds and stuff like that. That really, like, at this point, that is my character's backstory right there. Whatever the fuck I roll on those tables.
Well, see, those things are, I mean, if you roll on them randomly and stuff like that, and you can play to those, I mean, once again, Susie has a lot of experience. I have a lot of experience. Many of us who are sitting in chat actually have lots of experience. We can play random characters entirely fine because we understand what each one of those little niches is. Some people need to build their backstory in such a way where they have their flaws, they understand their characters, and they need to have a very deep-seated meaning to their character at all times. I get that because they can't associate themselves with the character. They can't relate to what the character's plight is or anything like that without having that connection. I understand that. There are players out there who can't do that kind of stuff. And I enjoy looking at those characters and going, okay, well, that's the way that goes. That's cool. Whatever. There are multiple games that do that. I mean, 5th edition has random tables that you can roll on. Shadow of the Demon Lord has tables that you can roll on. I mean, all sorts of wonderful things. And a lot of good can come out of that randomness. Give it a try sometime. If you're one of those people who likes to make sure that your backstory is a very specific way, try rolling on the random tables from time to time and try to play the way those random tables have come up. And see if you can do it. That's really a good test on whether or not you're a good player or not.
Okay, now this next question kind of connects to the link that I just posted in chat. I'm starting a brand new campaign this weekend, and I'm wondering what questions should I ask my DM before we begin. There are the obvious ones: feats, multi-classing, encumbrance. But what are some others that aren't so obvious?
Okay. So this one actually, there's actually two different links for this one. There's a link that Susie just posted, which is 28 things to ask your players before starting a game. And then there's the one that she's actually asking the question for. And this is other randomness. Now, I found this one over on Reddit, and it was actually kind of funny to look at because it has things that the players can ask the DM. Now, we always say from the DM side, the DM should be asking the players everything. It's their game, it's this, it's that, and everything else. But there are things that new players can do to help a new game master as well. And it's everybody's responsibility around the table to make sure that you're having an enjoyable experience. Now, these things are weird. There's 4 big ones that I found to be fucking weird as shit that I like. Are we eating at the session? And if so, should the players coordinate the food with the DM? That's a question the player should ask the DM.
Okay.
Is social drinking allowed? And if so, what can be brought for the DM?
Okay.
Can we help set up maps, minis, or markers? And can we keep track of any stats in any way during the game to help the game master?
All right, I can see that.
And then the last one here is, how should the party resolve internal conflict? I.e., when in-game knowledge, you know the druid pickpocketed a bunch of loot, and you or your PC could be pissed off. Can you kill the other PC, attack them? How do you resolve these things? So these are the kinds of things players should ask their DMs. Now, personally, on my table, since I have pretty much nothing but experienced players, I mean, I do have occasional, newbies, that I allow them to pretty much resolve their own conflict the way their characters would resolve their conflicts. As far as treating the GM, if you want to bring treats for the GM, like, cookies, chips, sodas, etc., especially in Susie and I, when we have a house rule when it comes to games at our house. Whoever is running the game is the host. So, for example, if I'm the DM, everybody comes to me. I don't go to somebody else to run my games. You come to me. I'm already spending enough time making sure that you guys are going to have fun around my table and setting up encounters and doing all the rest of this shit, that you guys can, at least come to me. That is one of our house rules. And our players have begun doing things like, one of our players, he brings craft beer with him and shares them around the table, which goes to the whole social drinking aspect of things. I mean, as long as you're of age, we're okay with it. And I have another one who brings random bits of strange food. He brings the weirdest shit sometimes. I have another one who brings leftovers from him and his girlfriend going out to dinner, and they couldn't, they ordered everything on the fucking menu and ate like 4 pieces of anything. And they bring over random food so everybody can have some food. So, yes, we do that kind of thing. Susie and I also have the rule of, if you want food and you want to eat dinner, because I run long games when they're face-to-face games, if you want food, you got to bring it with you to have it cooked, and you're doing the dishes. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that we have as house rules for us.
Yep. Okay. Now, how much adventure prep is too much? I never know when to stop writing, or if I've even written enough.
Okay. Here's this. All right. Adventure prep. There are 2 different things here. Writing too much, overwriting, is not adventure prep. That is adventure design. You write until you've told your story. As you saw with, our little basic, kobold stole chickens from a farmer, you can write that much. I mean, kobold stole chicken from a farmer, there's a goblin, and there's kobolds, and then the end. You could write that. That could be it. That a little outline, a little stick graph to show you how much you need to go. Or you could go into a full-fledged adventure where you write that out to be 32 pages and you want to publish it and do all the rest of that shit. Have beautiful maps and artwork and extra NPCs that have dialogue, and you could do all that. You write as much as you feel is needed to tell your story. Don't go beyond that. Don't tell extraneous bits of your story. That goes into the lore aspect of things, which we'll handle in a couple of weeks down the road. We'll handle what lore is when it comes to these things. But yeah, you don't need to say the chicken is left-footed unless a left-footed chicken is needed for a spell component. You know, there has to be a reason why you're telling the players these things. You only have to tell them a limited amount because honestly, players will not listen after they've heard what they need to hear.
Very true. Once, as an experienced player, once I've heard the basics, what I need to be able to get this chicken. Okay, Kobold stole it. There's a goblin over there. Wait, what's up with the goblin? Let's find out what's up with the goblin. Okay, I go back to the chicken. I honestly, as a player, I don't give a shit that the chicken is left-footed. I just know that this farmer needs a chicken back.
Exactly. And see, and that's where the devil in the details comes in, because you can overwrite. You can. There is such a thing as overwriting. If you've gone beyond what the story needs to be to contain that specific moment. But the devil can be in the details. For example, I have multiple players who are like Susie, who only listen to a certain amount of the information and then disregard the rest of it as not being relevant. Now, the problem with Susie Q is the fact that she has a photographic memory and an eidetic memory, and she's able to recall random bits of information she wasn't paying attention to. I throw out information like that on a regular basis just to trip up the players, just to give them red herrings, or to give them too much information where they have to disseminate that, oh, this left-footed chicken is required for this ritual to beat this hag 2 adventures from now. Everybody wishes they had Susie Q in their party until Susie Q is in their party. Then they're like, why the fuck is she here? Because she is one of the most difficult players to play with that you possibly can think of.
Only face to face.
Yes, yes. Susie Q actually has to sit in separate rooms from the rest of the party because she's not allowed to sit next to anybody because she causes disruptions.
Yeah.
But yes, you can overwrite. Is there any other questions that we have?
I have nothing.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Because we have actually gone about 5-10 minutes over. So that's not a big deal.
Yep.
So, all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we go, we're going to do our shout-outs. While we're doing our shout-outs, go ahead and type into chat where you are from. Give us a city, state, country, whatever. And Susie Q will go through the list, and she'll say hello to everybody. But I would like to give shout-outs, first of all, to our sponsors. We have 2. Our first sponsor is Dolmen Creative Studios. Dolmen Creative Studios are the creators of the Destiny 6 role-playing game, which is a D6 game. I was the main writer on that. I love working with these guys. They're absolutely amazing. Be sure to check them out at some point in time. Myself, I also want to thank our other sponsor, who is Smiteworks USA. Smiteworks has sponsored us and allows us to give away 1 standard license copy of Fantasy Grounds Virtual Tabletop every single month. And we give those away the last show of the month. So be sure to come back at the end of January if you would like to have a possibility of winning a free copy of that. I also want to thank our friends over at the Blackmore Society and over at Fantasy Grounds College. Both of those are non-for-profit organizations that help hook people together, either to teach them how to use Fantasy Grounds, or to hook players up together, or get game masters and players together, or whatever, special guests, etc., etc., etc. Both of those groups are absolutely great. Laren is here in chat. Casey Rift, he's around somewhere. I'm sure if you message him, he'll suddenly appear. I also want to thank all of my friends out here on Twitch. I want to thank Rob Tui, FSH Schmo, Zelakar. I want to thank our webmaster. I call him webmaster, but Shadzar, who has done 99.999% of all the coding that goes into the Delver Society website and the GeoQuesterGaming.com website. He's done both of those, and I love him for it. Thank you very much. I also want to thank all of my players and all the people who are in my Discord, everybody who is all over the place. The community is absolutely amazing. We really enjoy having everybody around with us. And I also want to thank because without you guys, this is actually a very, very important. I want to thank our patrons. Our patrons are what keep us going. They're the ones who pay for technologies. They're the one who pays for all the new map, utilities that I utilize, or the programs that I use in order to write things. They're absolutely amazing. If you ever want to be a patron, by all means, please go ahead and do so. Subscribe to us on Twitch, follow us on Twitch, etc., etc., etc. Come over to the Discord if you want to go ahead and play a game. But so that is pretty much all of my thanks, except for one person who I kind of left out of everything there. I want to thank my partner in GeoQuester Gaming. That would be my wife, Susie Q. She is the quiet business partner who runs around in the background. She does all of the administrative and financials in the background. I am just the voice and the face, quote unquote, the ugly ass face of GeoQuester Gaming. I'm the G, she's the Q. She makes sure that we are staying on track as much as we possibly can, and she spends a lot of time every month making sure that I am doing what I need to do. So so that is that. All right, so Susie, who do we have for shout-outs today?
Okay, well, we have Spokane, Washington. We have Tampa, Florida, Seattle, Georgia, Ohio. Oh, we have Wales, UK. Woohoo! We have Three Rivers, Michigan, which I guess it's rather cold there. And we have Indiana. That's what we have tonight.
Excellent. Spokane.
All right, Rob, you tell me how I'm supposed to say it.
So it's Spokane, it's not Colth? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank everybody for coming by this evening. Susie Q, myself, everybody else here. If you are looking for over 450 brand new spells coded for Fantasy Grounds, by all means, be sure to check us out on the DMs Guild. $5 for a whole shit ton of brand new spells for 5th edition D&D over there for sale by Jessica Wolfman and myself. And be sure to stop by tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern when I run Delver Society. The characters are going back to Black Waters, which they had failed in the past, and they're going to go try to save some corpses, or somebody who is about to become a corpse, in that one. And then Wednesday morning we have the Fantasy Grounds College winners of the special campaign, which is Tales from the Yawning Portal, Dragon Mountain. They will be playing at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. And then Wednesday evening we have the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels getting back together again to go kick the shit out of some White Plume Mountain with myself, Susie Q, Rob Toohey, FSH Schmo, CJ, and E. Cruz. All of us going through as the Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. So, ladies and gentlemen, for myself, for Susie Q, and for everybody here at GeoQuester Gaming, be sure to join our Discord, go to Patreon, follow, like, share, whatever. And we shall see y'all next time. Bye-bye!